I don't know what Zelensky or Europe is playing at, but this is really going to fuck everything up if it scales. Look, London just attacked Russia right where it hurts the Kremlin the most, which is in its energy system, in the middle of a truce, with the help of France, and with the intention of sabotaging the peace agreement that Trump and Putin have consolidated from this ceasefire. This is the accusation, not my words, I clarify. This is the accusation that you are making. A few hours ago, directly Moscow, Maria Zakharova, the spokesperson for the Russian Foreign Ministry, is the channel through which this information is delivered. Who has just dropped a real diplomatic bombshell. There you are reading it. Of course, it is a Russian media because it is Russia's accusations. But the thing is that it is confirmed information that the attack occurred and the characteristics of the attack. Look at what Maria Zakharova says. The order was given from London. Well, she doesn't just leave it here. She still finishes it off by saying that this proves that Kiev has no real interest in fulfilling the ceasefire agreed upon with Moscow and the White House, and that the only thing the Zelensky regime is looking for is to escalate the war. Hard to argue with that when there is indeed an attack on Sudzha, which is not supposed to happen at this time of ceasefire. This was not supposed to happen. Now, what is important now is not only that Ukraine attacked Sudzha. The important thing is when they did it. Because look, we are talking about a few hours ago, just 10 days after a 30-day truce came into effect. A 30-day truce came into effect where Ukraine and Russia had committed, through the White House, days of hours and days of negotiations, well, not to touch energy infrastructures on both sides. And what was the Zelensky regime's first response to this truce? Sending drones to set fire to a critical gas station, one of the most important gas stations in Russia. It's not just the fact that they violated the agreement, it's that they are daring this war to escalate again and to explode in an unbelievable, because we are not merely discussing Ukraine launching an assault on Russia, which is not a new occurrence in any way, shape, or form. We're talking about London attacking Russia. And this accusation alone, my friends, is already a fine. Because what Maria Zakharova is saying is that they did not do it alone. And you know, there is a lot of logic in the fact that somebody is behind Ukraine. I am not going to say who it was, because I don't have military intelligence systems. But what I can assure you is that Ukraine could not have done it alone. We already know that. Why? Because it does not make sense what we are seeing here today. In order to carry out this attack, Ukraine needs military intelligence, which it does not have. It needs satellites. It needs millimetric precision. And that's the only thing they have. One, the Pentagon, which is no longer giving information to the Zelensky regime. To the Zelensky regime, especially after the little show that was staged there at the White House after they got into a fight. And if it's not the White House, it's the European countries. And the fingers at this moment are pointing to London and France. You tell me in the chat room what you think, because this is not a minor accusation. This is playing with fire. What was at this point that you see here that they attacked? At this Sudzha station. It looks like someone might say, well, it looks like it is in the middle of the bush. But in reality, don't believe that it was a guardhouse and they lost the forest. This, my friends, is a gas measuring point that supplies the north of Russia and precisely connects it with the transit of gas to Europe. So it doesn't make sense, one would say, and there's a catch. Now I'm going to tell you the dirty business behind this. Why would Europe sabotage a gas pipeline, a metering station that ends up benefiting Europeans with cheap gas? Why would Europe do something like this? Just a strategic move. A strategic provocation. This is serious as a double-edged sword because it This is serious as a double-edged sword because it happens precisely at this moment when Trump from the White House was trying to calm the waters, to defuse the Ukrainian front, to pacify things. Now, if you are wondering why this is happening here, it is very simple. Trump and Putin are making a lot of progress in this issue of a truce. And the first step to peace is the energy truce, which was one of the first results of these long negotiation tables, finally achieved after a lot of work that Russia and Ukraine agreed, at least in theory, to stop attacking energy facilities for 30 days. The thing is that Zelensky did not comply, but not even for a week. It is not even half of the truce, and Zelensky has already broken it. In what manner and with the support of, according to accusations by Maria Zakharova, now they are saying with accusations that it would be with the support and complicity of, London and France. Which is very serious, because on the same day that these attacks happened, a few hours ago, the Russian Ministry of Defense also came out to say that they had intercepted 19 drones that were on their way to another oil refinery in Saratov. In other words, not only is this measuring station in Sudzha, they were also targeting a Russian refinery. So this truce is only serving Ukraine to say, let's see, I will slap you across the face and on the other cheek. Unfortunately, that is what is being painted on the stage. I would like the BBC to come out right now and say that this is a photo montage, that the videos they are showing are old, that it's not true that they attacked the Sudzha gas station, if it's true, that they are not denying that they were attacked. Now what we have is total silence because they are not going to make such an outrage as to say that to allege that Russia is intentionally destroying its own stations and refineries to add to the text. Because we are talking about a very, very organized strategy. This is not territorial defense. This is a very dirty economic war that benefits a twisted and small elite, because what they are doing is exactly the opposite of what they are doing. It's exactly the opposite. To what was sought with this pacification, with the truce, which is détente, but what the Zelensky regime is doing is putting pressure on Putin and Donald Trump to break this ceasefire, to disrupt the truce and end the ceasefire. This is not what the media is going to talk about. Europeans, they are going to hide it as far as they can. That what they are going to talk about is the moment when Russia responds, because they are going to say, look, it broke the truce, it targeted a Ukrainian oil plant, an energy hub, even refineries, maybe not really attacking them now. Well, refineries, I don't think they have any left. But a Ukrainian power plant, who wins with this? Clearly, the Europeans do not win, neither does Trump win, Putin does not win. The question is, does Europe win? Well, look, what if Russia breaks the ban? This moratorium, this ceasefire? Even if it is in retaliation to all these attacks that are being reported, what is going to happen? First of all, what will happen is that Trump will lose legitimacy as the mediator. Europe is going to say, you saw he couldn't. We told him not to trust Russia. That this was not going to get anywhere. Look how he breaks the agreement. Hey, 20 days ago they attacked Sudzha. I don't remember that. I didn't see it on the BBC. And then that's going to throw out the whole narrative. That the conflict in Ukraine can be pacified. Who is behind these provocations? Whoever is behind it, obviously what they want is war, not peace. And they are sabotaging the talks that have been achieved so far. And here, friends, we have to understand the background of this, that here is the secret now. When Maria Zakharova accuses London of being the one who launched this attack, of who gave the order, the question is why London? Why just now? Well, because London doesn't want an energy alliance between Russia and Europe that will be reactivated if relations are normalized. Germany doesn't want that, France doesn't want that, Poland doesn't want that. And right now, Russia is trying to reach an agreement with Washington to reactivate not only its energy systems, but also to lift the sanctions and re-establish the energy system, and to re-establish the SWIFT system to one of the largest banks in Russia, or Russia's sizable bank. And that is something that Europe does not want to allow, at least not the major European powers. And what happens If Trump really manages to stop this conflict, and Russia starts again to offer cheap gas to Europe like before, it's going to lower the price of gas, and everybody is going to say, hey, that's good for Europeans. Imagine cheap gas in the house, cheap gasoline, but the sale of liquefied natural gas from Texas is going to plummet. That all the energy blackmail that has benefited US producers so much since ties with the US were severed is going to collapse. Ever since they severed relations with Moscow and have had disagreements with the administration of Donald Trump, because they supported the Democrats, not the Republicans, what is going to happen? That many very powerful American companies are going to lose the pretext to continue to finance, for example, and the Europeans to companies like Lockheed Martin, which evidently the armament industry supported the Democrats and they hate the Republicans because Trump wants to end their war business. Lockheed Martin lives from selling weapons. If the war is over, that is not a business. And then Lockheed Martin loses, Raytheon loses, lose all the Democratic companies or companies linked to the Democrats who supported Biden. Who were the individuals that endorsed Biden and were actually recipients of subsidies from American taxpayers? That is to say, we should exercise caution as numerous influential U.S. Democratic elites may potentially have ties to this situation. This holds significance not merely in geopolitics, but also in terms of business implications. Look at data that is worth analyzing. Worth analyzing, figures from Stockholm International Peace, which is dedicated to looking at this. Just in 2023, global military spending reached $2.2 trillion. A good part of that money was moved thanks to Ukraine. So if peace arrives, what will happen? So peace comes, then what will happen? The flow will be cut off, the business will stop, the war business will end. We have seen this many times before. The case of Serbia, for example, in the 90s, every time they tried to sign a peace agreement, mysteriously a bombing or an attack appeared and nobody knew who was behind it. Or an attack and nobody knew who it was. Or a provocation that broke the dialogue table, and look at what is happening right now. Déjà vu? There is a logic here. Breaking these peace tables because it deactivates the influence of two powers, the war multiplies and the war business starts to flow again. Though the war business starts to flow again, this is a great threat to these companies. The accusations that Zakharova is bringing out today and putting a name and a surname to the sabotage and say that it was London and France, that it was the Zelensky regime that says it is willing to carry out the orders of its bosses to carry out the orders of his bosses to any provocation in order to hinder these peace talks because it is not a conspiracy theory. That is why Putin came out a few hours ago and said, well, there is still a chance that we can pacify this conflict. We can pacify this conflict, but that possibility starts with Zelensky out and a government administered by the UN or under the supervision of the UN, the White House, and even Europe if they want. But the first thing they need to do is to remove the shaman in front of them.
In principle, it would be possible under the auspices of the UN, with the United States, even with European countries, of course, with our partners and friends, to discuss the possibility of introducing the transitional administration in Ukraine.
Certain thanks here. I am looking at Kevin Alberto Garza. Basaldo says, happy. It's the first time I can see you live. Thank you very much, my friend. Thank you. Do for joining our streaming. And well, friends, by the way, I was telling you a while ago, what does the BBC say? What does Diane D'Obligio say? What does the big media financed by the European governments like Germany, United Kingdom say? That well? When I say geopolitical alignment, I am referring to whether or not the UK is connected to Europe. I am specifically discussing geopolitical alignment and avoiding the debate of the UK's membership in Europe. They say, silence. Because accusing a country of attacking your energy infrastructure against your energy infrastructure in the middle of an international truce and that country remains silent, it is because there is. I am interested in the BBC's response to this, and I would appreciate it if it could be aired immediately. What does the BBC or Diane D'Obligio have to say? Or the French media? To come out and say, Russia's accusations are reckless. It can't be possible, it's not true. We do not collaborate with the Ukrainian intelligence. The thing is that mysteriously there is a silence. If that is a Greek, yes, silence. This crack is indeed a ruthless division within the Western alliance. But it also affects us. Because folks, if this becomes the new standard and then we start to see the more attacks of this and more Russian accusations saying this was an order from London, this attack came from France, be careful because as we say in Mexico, tanto va el cántaro al agua hasta que se revienta. And then these accusations can escalate. And I believe that here comes the big question. Who is declaring war on whom? Since London is not consulting the UN, NATO, or the US Congress in making attack decisions, it is important to ensure proper engagement with these entities. Then we are talking about there exists a parallel power that is functioning independently, but who is giving the orders? Zakharova's allegations are very significant. Do you remember what happened in Libya, for example? With the United Kingdom? Or in Syria? Each time a conflict transforms into a matter of international relations, we see this pattern in other media, and we are not saying this to defend Putin, much less Donald Trump, nor to campaign for the White House, my friends. We say this because we are already seeing how the global chess pieces are being manipulated behind people's backs on the sly. This does not benefit. Of course, it does not benefit Putin or Trump, but neither does it benefit Europeans. It makes life more expensive for Europeans. The little cheap gas that Europe has left circulated through here, and now they will no longer have it. And now they are not going to have it anymore. Has it not occurred to us that there are American companies that were involved in financing this conflict, and that today they are insisting to keep the party going? As if nothing else mattered but their pockets, and as if the stability of the world were collateral damage. That's the thing. Today, Russia can still choose to reserve the right to abandon. The right to completely abandon this moratorium if Ukraine continues attacking, and do you know what that is? Music to the ears of NATO member countries. Of NATO member countries that says, oh, well, then keep on giving it to them because we are on the right track. Who in their right mind, and I think you have to think about this, who in their right mind is going to want to maintain a peace agreement, a non-aggression agreement, when the other side keeps slapping you in the face? And that, my friends, is exactly what those who are behind these attacks are looking for. That it is not Zelensky. Zelensky is just the war pawn. What they are looking for is to force a response, to provoke a response so that this agreement is broken. And when that response happens, to blame everything on Russia. And when that response happens, to blame Russia for having broken this pact. In the meantime, there is an accusation here, and there is a fact that no one can deny. Today there was an attack in an area that was not supposed to be attacked. Is there a military response from Russia? So far, we have not seen it, but when we see it, it will be the we told you so. There's no point in going on. It's broken. Let the war go on. That's the solution. If this sabotage is not stopped now, if we don't denounce, if we don't unmask those who are really behind this farce, this escalation, then what follows is a war without limits. And a war without rules above all, a war where the only thing that will matter is who makes money in these oil companies. Is who makes money in these oil and arms companies, not who loses lives or how many lives are lost, not who loses lives or how many Ukrainians die. So, if all this is starting to make sense to us, if we are beginning to understand what the real perverse game is that the mainstream media is hiding from us and why they are keeping their eyes and ears open. Media are hiding from us and why they are silent from London, the BBC, or from Germany, the DMW, I invite you to subscribe to the channel, to share this video, and to comment because it is the only way that we can find out, that we have to find out what is going on, so that now, as we say in Mexico, they don't pass it to us as smoke and mirrors, and we learn partially about what is going on. Notice that I think that lately, I'm going back to the camera because I am remembering something, like I remember this book by Orwell. Recently, it's become nearly a guiding scripture illustrating current events. The purpose of war is not simply to achieve victory, but rather to ensure its endless persistence. This war in Ukraine seems to be made for that so that it will never end, because that's business. For the United States oil companies doing business, there are individuals who earn billions alongside Biden and who are unwilling to see their businesses come to an end. Furthermore, it was advantageous for major arms manufacturers throughout President Biden's tenure. Some avoid knowing they won't create, that they're not going to make any more money from this war because it's about to end. That's the big problem. that you are seeing here today, says Jorge Cid. Orange Trump soon, war to war between Yemen and Saudi Arabia. Well, look, my dear Jorge Cid, it is not the case, but since you say about Orange Trump, I was just keeping something here that I found quite funny. That's hilarious. Let me write it down. Now let us search for it in order to determine whether we can locate it. A meme that I found quite funny. It says, our friend Juan in my mail. Greetings from Tijuana, Baja California. Greetings, Luz Marina Arribas. They say the English as always instigating war. Well, there's the accusation. There is the accusation of Maria Zakharova. The thing is, if this accusation is false, well, I would like to hear the answer. The problem is precisely that there is no answer, and when you see absolute silence, well, then one is forced to ask oneself why they are silent. Says Carlos Rojas Matos, they are making him step on the sticks. If they don't get their act together, Russia will lose. Because there are already claims that the Kremlin denies. The Kremlin sees no point in continuing with Cesar Fogos. He will continue as he is. The messenger of good says to Vladimir Putin, all his red lines have been violated as long as he has stood, that he has stood idly by, and this time he will do the same. That's the thing, that if he responds with force, then you're going to see the BBC and DOW making headlines saying, Russia break all fire. You're not going to see him. See, covering these kind of stories of what just happened in Sudzha and the allegations to be cleared up. But if he doesn't respond, then the other one is Putin is weak. And Trump has no word. That's the thing. He is becoming the pride of some and the pride of some and the disgrace of many. Veronica Lara says, hello, Victor. I don't miss any of your live shows. Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Veronica. And to all of you who, as always, Adrian Zamora claims that the English have a knack for throwing a stone and then concealing their involvement. Ya Rosa Rios says, greetings, very good, your analysis. Thank you very much, Gelia. 001 says that the Europeans are doing barbarities. It is always their turn. The role of the manipulated, he says. Greetings to the beautiful Tonalaya Luisco, and greetings to all those who have connected with us. See you in the next streaming. By the way, I hope to see you tomorrow. Hope to see you tomorrow. I hope to see you here tomorrow if God allows it, because I hope all the warnings you are making here are false. I have an Alexa here, and it has been flashing at me for a while now with these weather alerts that we have a real apocalypse coming here where we are. An ice storm of the worst that this area has had in many decades, up to 100 millimeters of ice. Ice, so you are talking about that we could lose power for several days, not hours, and well, we have to literally save water, blankets, and everything. Water, blankets, and everything, because it is not psychosis, but not having power here for a day can be power for one day can be very harsh on all these temperatures. Now I have never seen so many alerts at the same time everywhere. At the same time, everywhere at the same time. So I hope things will change. I am looking forward to the opportunity to communicate with you tomorrow and stay in contact.